So I laid there in terror for what seemed like forever. It was probably like 2 minutes. Tears are pooling in my ears, And I'm just laying there thinking, what am I going to tell Joel? Where are we going to put all these babies? And finally she says, okay, I can see everything. There's just 2. And I was like, 2, okay. From where my mind had gone to was going to be a breeze. Okay. I said, okay, 2. I said, well, you know what? I am almost sure it's going to be okay with Joel if you go ahead and tell me what we're having. She smiled for the first time, and I am not kidding you. It was an evil smile. She said, they're both boys. I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. You know how when you're in a crisis, the weirdest things go through your mind? I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, we cannot be having 2 boys. We just carpeted the bathroom. We should have gone with the tile.
Your Majesty.
We're continuing our conversation with Ginger Millermon about her book, Grace Thus Far, A Journey of Hope and Healing. And we're going to pick up where we left off with Jarrett still in the hospital, and you at a point of decision of saying we're going to leave him on the ventilator and see what happens.
What happened? Right. Well, we waited. At that point, we called our family together, my family from Kansas and Joel's from Colorado. They gathered there. I'll never forget the significance of the doctors putting a note on one of the doors saying the Millermon family. I mean, it was said, I'd seen that before for other families that were grieving. And it really hit home. That was us. I just couldn't believe we were at that point. And so we had a kind of a grieving room for our family. We continued to pray over him. The guys in our family, that Joel's dad is a pastor, Joel is a pastor, and my dad, they gathered around his bed over and over and just prayed over him and said, God, this would be a great opportunity for you to do something amazing, because we know you can do it. And I didn't have any doubt in my mind that God could heal Jarrett. I just knew that sometimes God says no. He doesn't always do just what we want. He sometimes has a bigger plan. And I really felt like that's where we were. So we waited. As the family gathered, we planned the funeral together. I wanted the old hymn, Safe in the Arms of Jesus, to be sung. I knew that's where he would be. And there was such a peace. As much as we were grieving, there was such a peace in knowing that I would see him again. It wasn't over. And so as we gathered, they began to wean the medications out of his body. He survived the first night. They didn't think he would make it through that night. And in the morning, they took a blood gas. They sent it to the lab like they always did to see where those levels were. And they brought it to Joel and I, and we couldn't believe it, because the carbon dioxide that should have been well over 100, signifying his death, was almost normal. It was 55. It had never been that low in his life. And we looked at this little piece of paper, these lab results, and Joel and I looked at each other and just grinned. And we said, God's got a plan for him.
My goodness. And
it was kind of like God took us to the end of what we could do as parents and what the medical field could do. And then he said, let me just show you what I can do.
I can never read this verse without thinking of our recent trip to India to adopt our little girl, Shazmita. And I think about that because India was a dark place. It really was. The poverty was staggering. It was overwhelming. We had children coming to our window of our car every day, going like this, banging on our window and rubbing their tummies, and they just were hungry. And there were thousands of homeless, starving children, and it was everywhere, and it was so dark and so hard to see. And God allowed us to go to India and go to this little orphanage in Orissa and rescue a little girl. And rescue her from a dark place. And I think about that in relation to what this passage says You know, we brought her home into our family where for the first time in her life she knew love and tenderness. She had a full tummy all the time. The first few weeks she would sort of hoard her food, and she would eat so much I thought she was going to pop. I mean, really, she would just gorge herself. And finally, after the first couple of weeks, she started to realize, I don't have to overeat, because in like 3 hours, there's going to be more food. And it was just so cute. She learned chocolate really soon. And like every 30, 40 minutes, she'd come in. She's hardly speaking any other English, and she'd say, chocolate. And I'm like, not right now. Maybe later. And then she learned later. She'd say, later? Chocolate later? Sounds like us, doesn't it? Chocolate now? But you know, I just think of the dramatic change in her life. From not having enough to eat, from never having a bath. She'd never had a bath. They'd just dump buckets of water over their heads, sort of wash them off. And so she had her first bath, and she had clothes and toys, and she was loved. And what a dramatic change in her life. And yet look at us, because that's what he's done for us 1,000,000 times more. We can't even comprehend it. He has rescued us from our sin.
We could find a way to let things go and toss them to the wind. Imagine if we both agreed to love each other, and you and me. We could find forgiveness. You are beautiful. You are beautiful. You are beautiful. You are beautiful.
God is good, isn't he? And he takes the things that we go through, and he takes our trials and even our worst nightmare, and he can really make it into something beautiful. I would have never thought 12 years ago, as we were suffering and as we were sitting in the hospital thinking Jarrett would be with us just a short time, I would have never known the beautiful things that God would do in our family.
Will you cry?